welcome back to the second faction preview for Gridwars 2.0. This time we're going to look at the men and women in blue who uphold the law on the streets of Titan City and on the grid itself. Yes, we're talking about the Titan City Police Department. Now, a couple of decades ago, the Titan City's finest were almost disbanded and replaced by a privatized law enforcement. However, the new city council, elected on slogans of reclaiming power from the corporations, did not let it share the healthcare's fate. Remember now, the healthcare was privatized and virtually purchased by the Sakara Corporation and now benefits them more than anyone else in Titan City. But with the TCPD's new astronomical budget, they became a force to be reckoned with on the grid. In the process, it became completely dependent on the ruling class, following its every brutal or absurd order. So that's a nice little twist at the end, that you get the police faction that you may think are the good guys, but in actuality they can be just as bad as some of the other factions, which is sort of a theme within Grid Wars, with the exception of perhaps the Titan Guard. The rest of the factions all have a dark streak to them. Now, I haven't really considered the last little line there about them being a bit of bad guys themselves when I play. I kind of treat them as if they are police and trying to uphold the law, but that's up to everyone to treat their own lore and headcanon as they wish. For now, I kind of treat them like good guys just because everyone else is so bad, but going forward, I may consider them a little bit more evil as well. Now, the main abilities and faction abilities, I guess, of the TCPD is the wanted tokens. Now, after an enemy deals damage to a police unit with an attack action, put a wanted token on that enemy. Wanted tokens are not condition tokens, and a unit can have any number of them. At the beginning of each round, remove one wanted token from each unit. So, that's all well and good, but what does the wanted token do? Well, when a police unit attacks an enemy with a wanted token, you can reroll one attack dice for each wanted token on the target. So it's relatively easy to see how, as your enemy is attacking you, they're going to be adding up more and more wanted tokens on them. Sure, they'll be able to get rid of one at the beginning of each round, but if they get a couple attacks in each round, they're going to get up to 4 and 5 tokens, and only removing one each round, in addition to a plethora of ways that the TCPD can actually add tokens to the enemies throughout the match. So it's a pretty strong ability. I like it a lot. I think it's somewhat thematic that as someone sort of raises their criminal level, they get focused on and targeted by the TCPD. It is worth noting that the enemy has to deal damage through an attack action and not one of their green abilities, engineering abilities, or even hacks. Those don't seem to count as the word as per the rules written, and so it's just attack actions, which I think is a good sort of defining way of handling it, since there are so many other ways for the TCPD to spread out the attack action or the wanted tokens as they so desire. So, having said that, I'm a pretty big fan of the TCPD. They were my second favorite faction probably in Grid Wars 1.0. I don't know if they're going to hold up there. I'm pretty excited about some other factions in 2.0. The corporation's leading the way for me, but I like a lot of what I see with some of the new factions. The Cypherons particularly, as well as the Scourge, look pretty good. I do want to see how well the Yakuza go with their new faction abilities and some of the units that have been reworked there. So yeah, we'll see after I get some more games in where they hold up. But let's look at the units one by one now, and we'll sort of give you the preview. All right, we'll start off the Titan City PD review with the top of the food chain with their commissioner. So Commissioner almost comes across as a bit of a retired veteran from the force, but they still totally respect him, and he's got a name that carries a lot of weight. At least that's the way he's portrayed in his stats. So he's got a ones across the board for engineering, hacking, and IDS. He's got no melee mastery, but he does have a 2 for range mastery. A standard movement of 4, no shields for protection, but standard life of 4, which makes him a little bit more on the fragile side, which is a little disappointing. Not disappointing, but a little bit something you have to consider when you take him, especially considering you're paying 30 points for him. But right here, his old school ability, that's probably what keeps me wanting to field him in just about every TCPD list. Now, normally, every time a TCPD character is attacked, the unit attacking him gets a wanted token. And TCPD units will get bonuses attacking enemies that have wanted tokens on them. The standard bonus they get is that they can reroll 1 dice per wanted token, but some of them will have specific abilities mentioning wanted tokens and what they get for that. Now, normally, your opponent will remove 1 wanted token from each of his characters at the end of the round, but the commissioner prevents that, which is a huge swing ability over the course of a game. You may wind up with 5 and 6 tokens on some of your enemies now, whereas usually they could eliminate 1 each round. And yeah, so that's why I would take him in most of my list if I could fit him in. So on top of that, he's got a melee attack. His cane, his hidden blade, is a critical strike, so all your natural skulls will be unblockable hits. And in addition to that, after an attack, he can move 1. So normally you can't leave combat, but this is one of those abilities that allows you to do it. And so it's great for if your opponent is locked down in combat with another one of your TCPD units, you can get maybe some damage in, or even if you don't get the damage in, you can remove the commissioner from melee range, and he's a little safer there, which is, what I mentioned is important for his survivability. He's got the Service Honor pistol, which is similar to most pistols that you'll see in the game, except it does have 4 attack dice instead of 3, so that's a nice little bonus. He's got this great ability here to, with the Arrest Warrant, to put a wanted token on a visible enemy. There's no range on that, so that's a great one to have as well. You can only do it once per round, but it doesn't cost any energy, and as your opponent will not be able to remove any wanted tokens, that's a great one to have. And then finally, he's the Precinct Legend, so he can boost the range of units around him. And I think when you're playing this guy, I would not want to be overly aggressive with him. Like I said, he's kind of fragile. He doesn't have great attacks, even though this melee one's nice because it's critical and you can get out of combat. And the pistol's a little better, but still that range of 6 leaves him sort of vulnerable. I would try to keep him a little ways back just to get as much out of this old school ability as you can, and then add in at least 1 more wanted token on a visible enemy per round, and maybe keep him back far enough with some of the other characters that already have a long range. Adding 2 to their range might make them a little better and not allow from some attacks that you wouldn't normally fit in. So after the commissioner, we have the captain, Captain Roy Donut Wales, which is a bit of a mouthful, but that's not too much to deal with. So I guess he's off duty, is at least the name of his stat. But when Roy receives damage, he can redirect up to 2 of that damage to another ally in a 6 hex radius, which can be pretty good to if you got to keep him alive, especially if you want to take advantage of some of his other abilities. So he's got no hacking and no hacking defense, but he does got a 3 under engineering. He's got a 1 under mastery for both melee and ranged abilities. The standard 4 movement, 1 shield, which is makes sense. He's clearly got this body armor on, and then 5 health, which is a little better than the average. He's got the TCPD baton, which applies stun on damage and has 5 dice, so that's a pretty great melee attack. And then the standard pistol, which only has the 3 attack dice. We see that on a lot of characters. Again, thinking of combining him with the commissioner, he can boost that range up to 8, which is better than a lot of the pistols in the game. Excuse me there. I really like this helipad extraction ability. Choose any ally, and it blinks to any hex in your deployment zone. So it doesn't need line of sight, and it can be a great late game ability if you're looking to achieve objectives. Maybe if you've picked up an item or with one of your characters and you don't want him to lose that item, you can blink him back to your deployment zone. Additionally, if it's to protect a high-value ally from being killed, you can blink them back to your deployment zone. Now, blink just means that they basically disappear or reappear. You've hacked through the grid, I guess. And then he's got the authority ability, which is when another allied officer begins its turn within 6, that ally gains a charge action. So that's just a great to be able to give free actions to other officers in the TCPD. And I'll point out the next few characters that all have the officer designation. So Harry Stone is the next officer. He's got the ability handcuffs, so enemies adjacent to Harry cannot move as a result of any effect. So similar to how you saw Commissioner Olmos had an ability to get out of melee range, or I guess getting out of locked combat. That ability would not work out of against a character that has this handcuffs ability. So there's going to be some characters on other factions that have abilities via blink or dash or just straight up text that says they can move out of combat. This handcuffs is going to prevent that. He's got 3 1-in-1 for engineering, hacking, and hacking defense. The 2 mastery for melee, 1 in range, standard movement of 4, 2 shields, and 6 for his health or body stats. So he'll be a little bit stronger than most, and allowing him the ability to throw characters in general, which is always great. You see that with the dwarf characters a little bit, have that body skill allowing them to throw. So he's got the shackle knuckles, which you may reroll any number of dice. And the TCPD gun, which is similar to the standard pistol. He's got the range of 6 and the attack of 3, 1-1. But you can spend a material or an energy to make it a little bit better. If you spend the energy, you can attack with critical strike. Or you can spend a material to get the 3+ range. I think I like that 3+ range a little better, especially since he has the 3 materials. But he's also got another ability looking to make use of it. And that's the shock-like classes. So you can apply stun to the target enemy in range 6, and you can spend 1 extra material to make this project become quick. So handing out stun is always a useful ability, especially at the clutch times. So it'll be interesting to see how you can really take advantage as time goes on. I haven't fielded him much in Grid Wars 1, and his abilities have changed quite a bit, so I'm looking forward to really trying him out in Grid Wars 2.0. And finally, he has the strict glare. So when another allied officer begins its turn into 3 hex radius, that ally gains 1 energy. So I guess it's kind of like he's bullying or bossing around his allies into doing a little better. But anyway, you get an additional energy, always good. All right, next up we have Officer Jason Zaglaba. So he's got a 2 for engineering, no hacking, but 1 IDS. He's got the 2 for range mastery, standard movement of 4, and then 2 armor and 5 health. So he's got some survivability. He's got this resourceful passive ability. So other officers in a 4 hex radius can spend Jason's, it's a little typo there, Jason's energy as their own. So if you wanted to be a little bit, I guess, risky, he's got some good survivability, but you could put several energy on him rather than spreading it out on characters that you weren't sure who would want to use it, and then they can spend it off him. So that's a really good ability. Still risky because your opponent can really target him and try and eliminate him, but early on it might be a good one. So he's got this gun bash, so he uses his gun in melee, which only has a 2 attack dice, but it does the 2 damage. So each hit is going to count for 2, and he has a +1 melee mastery for each wanted token on the target. So his minigun Boozer has a range 9 and attacks with 1 dice for each wanted token on the target and changes all blank results to hits. So again, if you have an enemy that's added up quite a few wanted tokens, you could be attacking with maybe 6 or 7 dice here, and all your blanks are going to be hits. That's going to be a powerful one, and I love that it's range 9. It's a great attack already. If you consider him having his range boosted by one of the other abilities, the Commissioner had a boost of range. He's attacking maybe range 11, so that's nothing to sneeze at, I guess, is what the people say. Old people, anyways. He's got this hangover ability, which, again, before I go into the ability, just the hangover, the boozer sort of names of his abilities means there's something there in the lore that this guy is maybe a bit of a washed up alcoholic or just a hard drinker, that I would kind of appreciate a little bit more lore to get a sense of it. But in my head, this guy is just going to be an old, gruff, functioning alcoholic. But anyways, his hangover. When your turn ends immediately, and you gain 2 actions at the end of the round. So it's a little way to space it out. It costs you an energy, but you could attack, use one of your attacks, maybe your range attack, then use the hangover to end and gain 2 actions at the end of the round. So basically getting an extra whole turn out of him. And then the ammunition keeper. So all allied officers in a 4 hex radius can spend 1 energy to change all mastery results to hits in ranged attacks. So that could definitely be useful. Usually they would have to spend 1 energy to change energy tokens over, but the mastery results, perhaps they only have a 1 or 0 in mastery, so that would be a great way to change those over. So again, another officer here. So these are still characters that could benefit from being next to the police captain, Captain Wales. He was able to give them all charge abilities. So this is Nelly Furora. Doesn't really roll off the tongue. So let's Lieutenant Nelly. So perfect spot. If she has not moved since the beginning of her last turn, she has 1+1 ranged mastery, and her attacks have plus range 4. That's great. Reflective Sniper, you often see similar abilities in games where if you do not move with the sniper character, their next shot is better. So if she has not moved since the beginning of her last turn, she gets this bonus. Her stat line here is she has a 2s in engineering hacking and a 1 in hacking defense. The 1 in range mastery, standard movement of 4, standard health of 4 with the 1 armor. So she has this scoped rifle, Justice Bringer, which already has a range of 13. So you're not going to often need much more range than that, but if you've set her up and you are just taking shots with her and not wanting to move, you'll have a range 17 with the 2 range mastery, so that can only be better. 3 dice, 1 armor penetration, 1 damage. So she has a hack. She's a nice mix of the sniper with the hacking abilities. So she has a net hack, so she has to be at a terminal to use this, but choose any terminal. All enemies adjacent to it lose 1 energy, and you gain 1 energy for each energy lost this way. So a little way to steal some energy if your opponent has left anyone, especially if they left more than 1 character near terminals. She also has this blackout hack, so all units lose Overwatch until the end of the round. So that would affect the neutral units, and then if your opponent has put any units into Overwatch. It also affects your own, so you will want to be cautious of that. And finally, she has this quick ability where her ranged attacks gain +1 armor penetration until the end of the turn. So it costs her 1 of her materials, but it reflects that she's using this piercing ammo. It just gives her a little bit more firepower with the sniper rifle that she has. Overall, great character. I love the idea of snipers in a lot of games anyways. And, in Grid Wars, a range 13 is pretty substantial. You don't see that, obviously, with much else other than the sniper rifles. But then bumping it up to the range 17 is even nicer. Officer Michael Blender. So, great name, Michael Blender. Another officer, so he'll be able to take advantage of the potential charge from the captain. He's got stats of 2-2-1 for engineering, hacking, and hacking defense. The 1 in range mastery, standard movement of 4, standard health of 4, the 1 armor. So in the perfect spot, when Michael Blender uses a move, attack, or charge action, 1 allied canine in an 8 hex radius gains the same action. So as we'll see, he is the canine officer, so he has quite a few abilities that link with the canine units that we'll see up next. So he's got the training baton, which is a 3 attack and 1 damage. So after the attack, if there is an allied canine in combat with the target, gain 1 shield for each damage dealt. So a little bonus for having your dogs with you. He's got a TCPD machine gun, nothing fancy, but a range 9 attack with 4 dice. He is the canine handler, so at the beginning of his turn, all allied canine in a 6 hex radius, restore 1 HP and 1 energy. So that's a great way of keeping them alive and giving a little bit of energy to the dogs. And finally, the synchronized routine. So when Blender attacks an enemy in combat with an allied canine, the attack gains precision, so he doesn't have to worry about friendly fire, and changes all energy results to hits. So just boosting your attacks without having to spend the energy. So he's great. He's pretty cheap, but you also have to consider the cost of the K9 units as well when taking him. I don't know. I would never take him without taking at least one K9 unit, but you would also really benefit from taking them both in a lot of instances. So here's the first one, the K9 Bio Athena. So she obviously has no stats in the engineering, hacking, or hacking defense. No mastery, but she moves a little faster than average at 5. And no armor, but she does have 3A life, which is not great, but she does have an ability, her passive ability, when Athena would be destroyed and you have at least one other alive unit, blink her to your closest hex in your deployment zone instead and add stun. So basically, as long as you have other units on the board, she will not be killed, which is great. She might be taken out of action by putting her all the way back to your deployment zone, but you have time to get her back into action. She's got the rapid bite. It has critical strike, so all of your natural skulls will be unblockable hits. And upon damage, she applies weakness and damage over time. So additional tokens to sort of condition tokens to wear down your opponent. Weakness, we'll have to look up again. But damage over time is at the end of your round, your opponent will have to take a damage token. So scent tracking. So Athena can gain a move action and choose an enemy in 8 hex radius and apply spotted to it. So you'll be easier to attack enemies with spotted on them. Fetch, which can be a great one in the right circumstances. Basically, she can target an enemy in range 6. They lose 1 energy, then gave a move or charge action. If you finish this turn adjacent to Officer Michael Blender, he gains 1 energy. So a little bit of she steals the energy from the enemy and gives it to Officer Blender. And finally, dog therapy, which I just sort of love. Each ally in 4 hex radius once per turn can spend 1 energy to restore 1 hit point. So there's not a lot of healing in the TCPD, so this is a great one to just sort of like add some health back to some of your units. And then we have the K9X Rex 2. So this is obviously a robotic K9. Both the dogs still have the officer tag, so they can benefit from anything that allows the officers to take extra actions or extra bonuses. So still, no engineering, no hacking, but there is an IDS of 2. I guess this guy's got a little bit of hacking protection. No mastery, movement of 5. He's got 1 armor, so he's a little bit more survivable than Athena, but Athena had that sort of dog heaven where she kept coming back to life. Rex does not have that. Instead, when Rex is destroyed, 1 ally in a 6 hex radius gains 1 material. This can be good. Material is a little tougher to come by in this edition of the game. Basically, you're sort of limited to what you start with unless you focus on dismantling neutral units, the neutral sentry guns or perhaps the CED. But you don't get them from just killing droid units like you did in the original Gridwars 1.0. So Rex has a mechanical bite, which has the critical strike. He attacks with +1 dice if the target's armor statistic is lower than 2. So you can select your targets for this to try and get additional dice. He's got the electric howl, which has a range of 4 in precision, so you're not worrying about friendly fire. Attack the target X times, where X is the number of energy tokens it has before the attack. So if someone has loaded up some energy tokens, you can really get some extra attacks. Usually, I find most people only have 1 or 2 energy on them, but you may find someone, maybe if they've gone as far as 3, you're getting 3 attacks, which is pretty great. He's got the quick ability of access marker, so put a backdoor token on any adjacent neutral unit, which just makes them a little bit easier for you to hack them in the future and harder for your opponent to hack them. And finally, he's got the Watchdog. So all other allies in a 6 hex radius have +2 IDS statistics. So that's this defense against hacking. So he gives a little bonus to all the other allies that are in 6 hex radius, which is great if they have low hacking, and even better if they already have somewhat good hacking. It makes them even harder to hack. So next up we have, the next 3 cards are going to be basically the same with different names. They are officers, so they can take advantage of the ability provided by the captain. But we'll have Officer Bogaki, Officer Wilinski, and Officer Wysocki. Now those names don't roll off my tongue, but I'm going to go out on a limb and predict that they are Polish last names, and they are probably named after staff from Cyberforge. I haven't heard that anywhere. I'm just guessing that, and I'm feeling that's likely. So anyways, the officer stats are 0s across the board here, no mastery, but they do have the standard 4 move, 1 armor, which is nice, but they only have the 3 health, so they are not very survivable. They do only cost 18 points, so they're affordable, but their main strength is if the officers are with all 3 within the 6 hex radius of each other, they will each gain attack twice. This is a bit tough because it makes them really susceptible to losing one of the 3 of them. I would much rather see this ability say while Officer Wilinski and or Officer Wysocki are in a 6 hex radius. So if you still had 2 of them, they would both get the attack twice. But as it stands right now, once you lose one of the officers, or if one of them is just out of the radius, you do not get this bonus. And whereas they don't have much else going for them, I don't think it would hurt them too much to make that an and/or. We'll see over time, like how they play. If it turns out that people aren't using them and it doesn't look like it's useful, they may errata that. That's just my thoughts. And again, that's without having played them much myself yet. So they do have this hardened baton ability, which if the target has at least 1 wanted token on them, they get an additional melee mastery. And then they have the standard TCPD pistol, and if they have at least 1 wanted token, they gain 1 range mastery. So that's in addition to the reroll that they would get for wanted tokens. And finally, they do have this great ability to put a wanted token on an enemy in range 6. They can only do it once per round, but it's still a pretty great ability because the wanted tokens for this faction are very valuable. So those are just similar, Officer Wilinski, all the same stats. So I'm not going to go through them again, but they are pretty cool. I do like that sort of unique side of the TCPD faction, having these really cheap units that work as sort of a crew. Most of the other factions only have named characters that are different. These guys are clearly they are named characters, but they're so similar that you wouldn't take them on their own. I think I would only ever take all 3 of them because you would clearly miss out on this ability right away. All right, now we have Ryan Ford. He's got a 0 in engineering, 1 in hacking, but the 3 in the hacking defense. 1 melee mastery, but 4 range mastery. That's one of the best in the game. It's got to be. It's the best I've seen so far in this review. Standard movement, 1 shield, and 5 health. So that's pretty great there. He's got the TCPD blaster at 2147. A few Blade Runner hints. I guess we got a Harrison Ford style character from Blade Runner. So the pistol's a little stronger than average. It's handy, so it can be used in melee. And if you are attacking from behind, it gets critical strike. So you got some abilities to really make him an above average attacker. He's got the Cover Me ability, so target officer in range 6 gains an attack action. If the attacker deals a damage, you gain a move action and 1 shield. So there's a few moving parts here, but again, we've talked about all the allies with the officer tag, and that was most of them up until this point. So they gain an attack action, and if it's successful, you gain a move action and a shield. So I would be trying to use this as much as possible. So hard proof, when Ryan begins his first turn in the game, put 3 wanted tokens on any enemy. So that alone makes me want to only ever take this guy if I've got the commissioner as well. And you can instantly put 3 wanted tokens on an enemy, and they will never remove them as long as the commissioner is in the game. Finally, he's got the intuition ability, which he can change all energy results into saves when defending from an enemy with at least one wanted token. So again, those wanted token abilities are really stacking up. Great character. He's on the expensive side, especially if you do want to pair him with the Commissioner, but I think they make for a really strong duo. Speaking of strong, we have Prosecutor Harsh, which is a bit of a play on Judge Dredd. Unfortunately, it does not roll off the tongue as easily as Judge Dredd, but if you're playing at home, you can just call him Judge Dredd. He's got a 2/2/3 for engineering, hacking, and IDS, a 1 melee mastery, and a 4 for range mastery. So I just sort of gushed over Ryan Ford having the 4, but there's multiples within this faction. The movement of 8, because he's on the bike here, is great. He has a shields of 3 and health of 6. So he's pretty survivable, got some great move, great stats already. He is obviously the most expensive unit we've seen so far, but I think he kind of makes up for his cost. So he's got this mobile justice. Once per turn, on Harsh's turn, once per Harsh's turn, at any time during a move action, he gains a bike turret attack action. So you can like be moving your 8, and at some point during that attack, while you had line of sight at someone, you could attack them. So that allows you to sort of drive past someone, lose line of sight to them, but it's because it says at any point you could have attacked him during while you still had line of sight to him or line of sight without cover. He's got a TCPD pistol, which is the legalizer. It is only range 5. Other than that, the stats are standard, but if the target has at least 2 wanted tokens on him, he gets additional die and additional damage. So it could be he wants to target sort of the criminals with reputation, I guess is his lore, which makes sense in the Judge Dredd universe. He would be he wouldn't be sent out over the common criminals. So he also has the bike turret, which again could be getting extra action from his mobile justice, range 9, 3 attack dice. The criminal network, so he can put put X wanted tokens on all enemies in a 6 hex radius, where X is the number of enemies in that radius. So if you're surrounded in that 6 hex radius, you've got somehow fit 4 enemies into it, like they were clustered up. You could be putting 4 on all of them. That's a great one to have, especially again if you've got the Commissioner, so they cannot take them off at all. And finally, he's got this one-man job where while there are no allies in a 6 hex radius, Harsh can change 1 energy result to a hit in all attacks. So you do want to leave this guy by himself. He sort of does the job best on his own. He doesn't want to team up or cluster up with the other officers or his allies in general. And with this bike version of Prosecutor Harsh, it's a lot easier to do that because he's got such a great move. He can move away from his own teammates. But he does have a version on foot as well, and unfortunately in Gridwars 2.0, there's no cohesion between the on foot and the bike characters. I do kind of wish that still existed. In Gridwars 1.0, I sort of was you lost the bike, there was a way to get the on foot model. So here he's got the Oath. Harsh attacks with +1 die for each wanted token on the target. So again, that can be very useful if you combine with Ford and the Commissioner, that he could be attacking with, just if he attacks with the character that Ford put 3 wanted tokens on, he's at 6 right away. That's not counting additional wanted tokens those characters may gather. He's got the 2/2/3 across the board, 3 in melee, still the 4 range mastery. This is likely an error. I'm going to guess he's got 4 movement. This looks like it's carried over for his bike edition, and they will probably correct that. 3 shields, 5 health. He's got the wall crusher ammo, so this is the basically a heat-seeking sort of thing. I guess it's wall crusher, so you got to think it's almost like a cannon. He's shooting right through terrain that is in between you and the enemy. In addition to that, it's got the 3 dice and 3 armor piercing, so it's some heavy-duty ammo, I guess we'll say. He's got the burst ammo, which has a range of 6. It's handy so we can use it in melee combat and changes all energy results to hits, so you don't even have to spend your energy to do that. And finally, the tasing ammo, which again is also used can be used in melee combat and applies stun to the enemy on damage. Not as much damage applied though. It's only 1 dice. so don't know why I would use that unless I was desperate to stun the enemy. Well, actually, desperate to stun the enemy, but also if you had a bunch of wanted tokens on them, you'd be much more likely to do so, because this could be bumped up to 4 or 5 even. So he's also got that one-man job ability, so he's a lone wolf. He wants to be on his own. It's a little easier to keep him on his own on the bike, but you start your deployment with him not even within range 6 of your enemy or of your allies, and just never get back into it. So here we have the riot officer Bob Blunt. So despite having an officer in his name, he does not have the officer tag. We'll see if that gets changed in the future, but for now he does not benefit from the officer abilities of, say, the captain. So he does have the 2 engineering, no hacking, but the 1 IDS defense, no mastery skills, a standard movement, the 2 armor, which I guess it makes sense because he's got a lot of body armor and a shield, and he's got the 5 health. He's got the crowd control ability, so while there are 2 or more enemies in a 2 hex radius, he has +3 melee mastery, so he benefits from getting surrounded a little bit. And he's got his anti-riot baton, which has a reach of 2. We don't see a lot of that, but allows him to attack in melee from 1 hex away. And on damage, he can attack again. Target unit that was not yet attacked in this attack action. So again, if he's surrounded, he can get basically unlimited attacks until he's attacked everyone that is within range 2 of him. So again, your opponent's probably going to try to avoid that, but if you can get him right in the center of a cluster of guys, you can get a lot of attacks, and with the 5 attack dice, you're likely to keep doing damage. So he's got his tactical shield. So gain a throw +2 action against an enemy, then gain a charge action against the thrown enemy. A little bit of a typo there, but we know what's going on here. So the throw +2 means he could throw someone up. He treats his body stat as a 7, so he can throw everyone lower than that. So it gives him a little bit of greater advantage because a lot of the human-sized characters will have 5 body stat. Yes, but that's great because he can throw them and then charge afterwards. So it's a combo attack. Full gear. So when an enemy uses a range attack against Blunt, he gains a shield before the attack roll. So that's excellent to have. He's got the shield, and you get that. You'll get a shield token, which can be removed instead of taking a damage. Finally, he's got the phalanx ability. So enemy range attacks must target him if he is the closest visible target, and there are no other visible targets at the same range. Basically, forcing them to give him the shields. Basically, he can hopefully take a little bit of those attacks and protect your more fragile units. Again, thinking of the Commissioner or something like that. Really cool looking unit. I like the sort of the police shield with baton. It's a great look. We've got Deputy Hardfall here. Again, not an officer, but I guess just a police deputy. He's got the 2 engineering, no hacking, and the 3 in IDS, which is really good. The 1 melee mastery, the 2 range mastery, standard movement of 4, 3 shields, and 5 health. So he's got this ironclad ability. So enemies using melee attacks against him have to spend 1 energy to change each energy results to a hit. So normally they can spend 1 to change all energy results, but in his case it takes 1 for each. And I'm going to assume this negates weapons and special abilities that say something along the lines of pay 1 or change all energy results to hits. I think they have to follow his text. I think that takes priority, but that'll surely be answered in an FAQ in the future. So he's got his ion cannon, range 7, which is pretty good. It's a plasma weapon, so you can boost it at the risk of taking damage yourself. But he already starts with 4 dice, but you can get an additional dice and damage, I believe, from plasma. And on damage, he applies the damage over time token, which is always a good thing to apply. They will have to take a damage at the end of the round. So the Ion Catalyst, your next ion cannon attack this turn gains +1 die and restores health instead of dealing damage when overcharging from plasma. So normally, if you overcharge from plasma and you get blanks, you take those as hits. But in this instance, which I would want to use this as much as possible in the late game. It costs him a material token to do it, and he only starts with 2. But yeah, after he's taken a few damage, I would be overcharging that plasma and hoping of getting a couple blanks and healing yourself. And he also can gain Overwatch until the end of the round. Not sure how that benefits him too much over just applying Overwatch, but we shall see. Yeah, I'm not sure what I think about that ability. I definitely love the Ion Catalyst, though. And he's got an Hazmat Suit, which he receives no damage from mines and template weapons, which is good. Obviously, your opponent will probably opt to not target him with the template weapons, but you can just walk through mines and sort of clear them out for your other allies. Now we've got Bata. He's a police, and he's got the droid designation, so we're going to see that in a few of the upcoming units. He's quite expensive. He's got a engineering of 1, hacking of 3, and a hacking protection of 3. 1 melee mastery, 1 range mastery, standard movement of 4, a nice 3 armor, and 6 health. So he's got a destruction hub, so all other allied droids in a 6 hex radius have +1 mastery in both melee and ranged. So he sort of supports the droids that we'll be seeing following up. He's got his steel uppercut, so he can attack with 1 additional dice for each wanted token on the target. Again, that's a special ability for those wanted tokens. He's got the Justice Blaster, which is a plasma weapon with range 5 and a great 5 attack dice. He's got his Brutal Investigation, which is a unique ability. It costs 1 energy. He can dash 6, so move 6, which includes through characters, then gain a steel uppercut attack action with after attack, put a wanted token on the target. So that's a mouthful, but you can dash, and if you wind up in melee contact with an enemy, you can then take a free attack, and if you put damage, actually no, it's just after attack, regardless of either you do damage, they get a wanted token. So it's just 1 more wanted token on an enemy. And then he's got this AI orders, which is unique, but also a quick ability, so it doesn't cost you an action. 1 other droid in a 6 hex radius gains a move, attack, or charge action. So it's again, anytime you can stack abilities or stack actions, I think is great. And the TCPD have a lot of ways to do this with sort of the captain and the officers, and now Bata and the other droids. And we're going to look at some of those droids coming up here. So first off, we have Roger 1, and this is Roger 1001, but you can have up to 3 of them. And they all have the exact same stats, so we're only going to look at this 1 card. But they have, a cost of 15, so they're pretty cheap, as you would expect, because they're similar to the officers that we saw earlier, in that they are easy to get a lot of them on the board, but they're not particularly strong. So no hacking nor engineering, but there is the 1 hacking defense. No mastery, standard move of 4, great armor of 3, but only 2 health. But those armor of 3 should give them some staying power. So the Age of the Machines, while there are 2 or more other droids in a 6 hex radius, Roger 1 attacks with +2 dice. So the normal attack is only 2, but he's already going up to 4 when they have the other droids within a 6 hex radius. So it's range 6, and if they have at least 1 wanted token on them, change all energy results to hits. So that's great. You can do that without spending any energy, without even investing in energy on the Roger 1s, because they are a bit fragile. So you may not want to invest in that way because they may lose that energy. We have the repressive conditioning, so you can remove a wanted token to apply stun. So in the right situation, that can really hold them up or set them back. Then they also have self-destruct, so you can destroy this unit and deal 1 damage to each adjacent unit. So again, you get into a cluster of a couple of guys, especially if he's already only got 1 hit point left. You may as well just destroy them and see what you can hand out in damage. So again, you could have up to 3 of these guys in your lists, and they could all be getting additional actions from Bata if they were close enough. We also have Drod Sinclair, which is he's another droid. I think he's got a little more character. I don't know much about him. There's no real lore, but he's got clothes on. He's got much different look to him. He's got this large sort of hand here, this weapon built in, and a lot more character to him, and a lot more advanced than just the Roger droids. He's got a 2s across the board for engineering, hacking, and IDS. 1s in the mastery, 4 for movement, 2 armor, and 5 health. So for Crime Watch, he always has this passive ability. He always has Overwatch, but gains an attack action from it only when enemies with at least 1 wanted token walk into it. So again, not great in the early game, but once your enemies get a lot of wanted tokens, he's going to be on constant Overwatch, so something for them to have to deal with. He's got a scope rifle, so range 10, and if the target has a spotted token, he attacks with critical strike, so all his natural skulls would be unavoidable hits. So for 1 material, he can restore 1 HP or gain 1 energy. I don't think the ratio of 1 material for 1 energy is that good, but restoring a hit point is definitely worth it. He's got 1 hacking ability for a direct hack. The target enemy in range 8 cannot use range attacks until the end of the round. So that can be very crippling if you especially target one of their better ranged fighters. And finally, he's got constant surveillance. When an enemy finishes an action in a 6 hex radius, apply spotted to that enemy. So again, spotted on the enemy makes them easier to hit, and we've seen a few abilities mentioned already that if they have spotted on them, they can take additional, be easier to hit, sorry. So we also have this guy here, the Exobot Ariana. So I feel in most respects this should be a droid, but it is not right now. It's a bot, and maybe it's just because it's too powerful to be taking extra attacks or actions from other units. 0/0, but 2 in the hacking defense, 1s in the mastery, 4 for movement, 2 shields, and a great 7 health. He's got the toxicity. So when an enemy deals damage to Ariana with a melee attack, apply damage over time to that enemy. So he's basically handed out poison in defense against melee attacks. He's got the mechanical maul, which is a great 6 dice. There's no abilities to it, just 6 dice and 1 damage. Cyber poison, so it's got a range of 5, but it is handy, so it can also be used as a melee attack. With you attack with plus X dice, where X is the target's hacking statistics. So you can use this as a hacker killer for sure. It's only got 2 dice naturally, but you can go up to whatever your picture some of those hacking stats we've seen. Commonly 1s and 2s, but there's a couple 3s and higher out there. And after the attack, it'll apply silence. So you really want to target a dangerous hacker because the silence prevents them from hacking until it's removed. And finally, he's got a melting ray, which is a fusion weapon of range 7 and 3 attack dice and 1 damage. And he's got this ability of web trap. So after the enemy fails a charge against Ariana, apply immobilize to that enemy, and Ariana gains an attack action against it. So I would probably just refrain from charging the Ariana just because I get too psyched out about these failed charges that I would try to avoid unless I really felt the need to do it. But he gets too much of an advantage if you fail a charge and then attacks you. Yuck. Oh, one more droid I had missed. So this is Crabbo, 18, pretty cheap, but not the cheapest in the faction, whereas they have the officers and the other Roger 1 droids. 0 engineering, 2 for hacking, and 1 for hacking defense. No mastery, standard move, 1 shield, and only 2 health. So he's not anyone you take to survive. I do like just having these somewhat cheaper units to round out the faction sometimes. So after he's destroyed, you place a mine on his hex. So that's a nice little bonus. You can place a mine there. If he's killed in melee, that mine is probably going to detonate on your enemies. He's got a laser pointer, so he can apply spotted to target enemies. That's for free, but once per turn. Again, for free, once per turn. He can remove a wanted token from a target visible enemy with at least 1 wanted token, and they lose 1 energy. So again, situational, but if you're trying to sap the energy from your opponents, this is a good way to do it. It's got no line of sight, or no range, just as long as they have line of sight. And finally, in machine communication, he can activate a sentry gun on an adjacent hex. So his attack itself may not, well, he doesn't have any attack itself except the standard unarmed attack that every character has. But he can benefit from being next to a sentry gun and using their attack. And finally, he's got the background camouflage, so when he's on a hex adjacent to a high barrier, he cannot be targeted by a ranged attack and charges. Basically, he blends in. And that brings us to the end of the faction. So I think you've seen a lot of cool abilities within the police faction. First off, that stands out is all of the officers and droids. That's a little unique to the faction, and I like having those cheap units because it can sometimes be tough building lists in this game, and finding that you're often like 10 or 15 points under your point limit, and there's nothing else you can fit in there. So having these guys at 18 and 15 points, including the K9 units, are relatively cheap. I think I like them best as the fill-in cheap units, even if you don't have the K9 officer. But anyways, that brings us to the end of the faction preview for the TCPD. Probably my second favorite faction from Gridwars 1.0. I haven't played them yet in Gridwars 2.0, but I have played against them. And I still think they're a really unique faction. I like what you see in them, and yeah, let me know what you guys think of them and what you think of this review in general. I hope you enjoyed it a little bit, get you a little psyched up for the game, and hope you start playing. See you on the grid.